She shouldn't be eating here. The voice was loud and mean. It made everyone stop and look. Three bikers stood near the door laughing. One of them leaned over and pushed her wheelchair just a little. Not hard, just enough to make her roll into the side of a table. A fork hit the floor. A coffee cup broke near her foot. She didn't cry. She didn't say anything. But the boy near the window saw everything. So did his dad. Nobody stood up. Nobody helped. 30 minutes later, a green military truck pulled into the parking lot. Three Marines got out, and the whole diner went quiet. Grace came to the diner almost every afternoon around the same time. She always sat in the same booth, the one in the back corner, right under an old clock that was always 5 minutes late. That booth felt like hers. People knew not to sit there. Most days, she wore a soft flannel shirt and jeans. On the collar of her shirt, there was a small pin. If you looked closely, you'd see it was from the Marines. But Grace didn't bring it up. She didn't talk much about her past. She stayed busy folding napkins and wrapping forks and knives. She worked slowly, but you could tell she knew exactly what she was doing. Her wheelchair made a light squeaking sound when she moved, but she didn't seem to notice. She liked her routine. It helped her feel calm. The manager gave her short shifts, just during the lunch rush. Nothing too heavy, nothing too long. And that was fine with her. She never asked for more. This little job gave her something to do, and that was enough. Most people didn't talk to her. Some gave a polite nod. Others looked away, maybe unsure of what to say when they saw her missing leg. But Grace didn't let it bother her. She wasn't there to stand out. She just wanted peace. In the pocket of her coat, she carried an old wallet. Inside it was one photo. Her and the people she served with in the military. They were smiling in the picture, standing close in the sun. She used to look at it a lot, but not lately. Still, today felt different. She couldn't explain it. Just one of those days where the air feels a little heavier, like something's about to happen. The sound of the door swinging open was sharp, like someone wanted to be noticed. Three men walked in, loud and full of themselves. They wore big black boots, heavy jackets, and old leather vests with nicknames stitched on the back. Tank, Goose, and Blade. Their laughter hit the room fast. Not the kind of laugh you join in on. The kind that makes people look down at their plates. Grace didn't react. She kept folding napkins, placing them one by one. But she felt it. The air had changed. Like something was off. Tank was the biggest of the three. He had a thick neck and a smile that didn't feel friendly. He looked right at Grace and grinned. "Well, look what we've got here," he said, nudging his friends. "Someone roll in from the VA?" Goose laughed. "Nah, man, that's Combat Barbie. Bet she's here for the sympathy tips." Grace didn't say a word. She just kept working. Blade banged the little bell on the counter. "Hey, we getting menus or just watching the help roll around?" Grace slowly wheeled over to them. She sat up straight. Her voice was steady. "Would you gentlemen like today's special?" Tank smirked. "Sure, soldier girl. Roll it on over." His voice was loud on purpose. Goose leaned forward. "Funny they let folks like you serve food. Isn't that against some health rule?" In the back corner, a couple shifted in their seats. The waitress at the counter looked up, then quickly looked down again, pretending to clean something that didn't need cleaning. Grace didn't answer. She calmly placed their menus in front of them, one at a time. Napkin, knife, fork. Same quiet care as always. Tank leaned back and muttered, "Don't they have kitchens for you people back at the VA?" Grace didn't stop. She just rolled away. From a booth nearby, someone let out a small laugh. Blade stretched out his legs, taking up too much space. "Maybe she's here for combat training," he said. "Lesson 1, how to ignore your betters." Grace didn't look back, but in her chest something tightened. And deep down, she knew. This wasn't the worst of it. Not yet. Grace made her way toward the coffee station. She kept her eyes on the pot as she reached for it. Her hands moved carefully, just like always. The sound of her wheelchair tapping the counter was soft. She kept her breathing steady. Behind her, the men laughed again. Louder this time. They didn't care who heard. Tank spoke first. "You know what I never got?" he said, loud enough for the whole room. "Why they let women into combat. Just slows everyone down." Goose added his part. She probably sat behind a desk and called it war. Grace didn't turn around. She didn't say a word. But her hand, the one holding the coffee pot, paused for just a second. Then Blade stood up. Not fast, but with a kind of energy that made people nervous. He walked toward her, like someone who thought he was being funny. "You deaf soldier girl," he said. "We're talking to you." Grace turned her head just a little. Not scared, just calm. She looked at him like she was measuring what might happen next. Blade kept going. He walked right up behind her and grabbed the handles of her wheelchair. No warning, no asking. Then he yanked it forward, hard. Her front wheel hit the leg of a table. The tray on her lap flew off. Coffee spilled across her arm. A fork slid across the floor. And Grace fell, fast and rough. She hit the floor with her right leg twisted under her. The metal from her prosthetic dug into her hip. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stayed still. The room went quiet. The busboy stopped moving. The waitress behind the counter covered her mouth. A couple near the window stared down at their food. No one got up. Blade laughed again. Not loud now, just low and mean. Tank and Goose laughed too. Like the whole thing was a joke. Grace didn't move right away. Then slowly, with both hands, she pushed herself up. Not because someone helped her, because she had to. Her wallet had fallen out. The photo inside slipped onto the floor. It showed her and her team, standing in the desert sun, arms around each other. On the back, someone had written, "She carried us every damn time." Grace looked at the photo. She picked it up, brushed off the corner, and slid it back into her wallet. Then she grabbed her chair, set it upright, and climbed back into it like she'd done it 100 times before. No one said a word. The bikers leaned back in their seats. Tank mumbled something about government handouts. Nobody laughed. Grace rolled back to her corner. She didn't clean the coffee from her clothes. She didn't fix her hair. She just sat there, hands resting on her lap. Near the window, the little boy was still staring, his eyes wide. He leaned toward his dad and whispered, "Is that lady a soldier?" His father looked over. He wore an old ball cap with some military patches on it. He looked at Grace for a moment, at her steady hands, her face, the stain on her jeans. Then he said very quietly, "Yeah, Tommy, she's a real one." He stood up, pulled out his phone, and walked outside. Outside, the sun was starting to drop behind the buildings. The man in the ball cap stood beside his truck, looking out at the quiet street. He held his phone to his ear. "Yeah," he said, "this is Sergeant Daniels. I need to report something." He paused, listening. "No, not official. It's personal. Civilian ground, but it's about one of ours." He didn't say much more, just gave the location and said, "You're going to want to send a team. Trust me." Then he hung up and looked back through the diner window. Inside, Grace was still sitting at her table in the corner. She was fixing the sleeve of her shirt, brushing it off like dust, but her hand stayed near her chest for a second longer than needed, like she was holding something in, or trying to keep something steady inside. The room around her had gone back to normal, at least on the surface. The bikers were laughing again. Tank waved for more coffee. Goose spun a butter knife on the table. Blade leaned back in his seat, feet up, looking like he owned the place. No one said a word to Grace. No one asked if she was okay. She didn't expect them to. She just sat there, upright and still. Her clothes were still wet. Her hands were folded in her lap. Her photo was back in her wallet, tucked away. But something in the room had changed. It wasn't loud. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before something happens. And then, the sound of tires on gravel. Not a regular car. Heavier, slower, like something made for a different kind of road. A military green SUV pulled up out front. Dust rose behind it. It stopped right in front of the diner. The engine kept running, soft and steady. Inside, people looked toward the window. Even the waitress paused, her tray half-balanced in her hand. The door opened. 3 Marines stepped inside. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The door didn't just open. It moved with purpose. Not rushed, not slow, just sure. The first Marine who stepped in was older. Strong shoulders, gray hair. He walked with a slight limp and used a polished cane. His eyes moved across the room like he was checking every corner. Behind him came a tall, younger Marine. Clean shave, pressed uniform. He was pushing an empty wheelchair. The third was a woman. Her posture was straight, and her uniform carried a line of medals. She didn't say a word, but when she looked around, people stood still. Even the waitress, who had been mid-step, stopped moving. The bikers froze. Goose dropped his butter knife. Tank looked confused, like he didn't know what was happening. Blade sat up straighter in his seat. He didn't smile this time. The Marines didn't look at them. Not yet. They walked straight to the far corner of the diner. To Grace. The older Marine came to a stop right in front of her table. He stood tall, despite the limp, and gave a perfect salute. "Staff Sergeant Torres," he said. "Forgive our delay." Grace didn't answer right away. Her body reacted first. She raised her hand and returned the salute, firm and steady. For the first time that day, her eyes had a spark. Not fear, not anger, just something real. Something she hadn't shown in a long time. The diner was completely silent. No one moved. No one made a sound. The female Marine stepped forward next. Her voice was calm, but clear. "We received a call," she said. "One of ours said a decorated Marine had been publicly harassed in this place." She let her eyes scan the room. And finally, they landed on the corner booth. On Tank, on Goose, on Blade. They didn't say a word. Tank's jaw tightened. Goose looked at the floor. Blade shifted in his seat, trying to look smaller. "And that physical assault was involved," she added. Grace shook her head, just slightly. "It's nothing," she said softly. The older Marine didn't flinch. "With respect, Staff Sergeant." "It is not nothing," he replied. And this time his voice was loud enough for the entire room to hear. "No one touches one of ours, not in combat, not in peace, not ever." Then the younger Marine stepped forward. He looked at the bikers, then back at Grace. "Staff Sergeant Torres led our unit through Fallujah," he said. "She pulled 3 of us out of a burning Humvee after it got hit. I was one of them." Grace looked at him now. Really looked. "Private Jenkins?" she said, her voice quiet. "Corporal now, ma'am," he nodded. "Thanks to you." From the counter there was movement. The young boy from earlier, Tommy, stood up. His dad stood beside him. Across the room, an older man wearing a Korean war hat slowly rose from his seat. He raised his hand in a silent salute. He didn't say a word. Then a woman near the door stood too, followed by 2 men in National Guard shirts. One by one, people across the diner stood up. No shouting, no clapping. Just straight backs, still hands, and quiet respect. The bikers didn't laugh anymore. They didn't speak, because for the first time since they walked in, they didn't own the room. Grace did. A week later, the sign outside the diner was different. The old metal one that used to say Rusty Fork Grill was gone. Now a wooden sign hung over the door. It said Homefront Cafe, and below that, where respect is always on the menu. Inside, the walls had new frames, photos of local veterans, names, years, old uniforms, all looking forward, like they still had something to protect. Grace still came in every day. She still rolled silverware and wiped tables. But now people stopped to say hello. Some just gave a quiet nod. Others said thank you. She wore her Marine pin out in the open now, and on the back of her wheelchair, she'd taped a small American flag patch. It was faded, but it meant something. The manager started dressing a little sharper. He hired 2 more veterans that week. One worked the kitchen, the other helped on weekends. Every Thursday, just before 6, that same green SUV rolled into the parking lot. The Marines would come inside. No speeches, no orders, just coffee, quiet stories, and sitting together. One night, just as the sun was setting, a young man walked in, barely old enough to shave, wearing a new Army uniform. He stood near the door, holding his cap, unsure if he should stay. Grace saw him right away. She rolled over to him and smiled. "First time heading out?" she asked. He nodded. "Tomorrow morning, ma'am." She pointed to the booth. "Have a seat. Coffee's decent. Company's better." He looked nervous. "I don't want to bother anyone." "You're not bothering us," she said gently. "You're one of us now." He sat down, and around the room every veteran raised their coffee cups. No words, just a quiet welcome. Because from that day on, no one in that town ever stood alone again. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment if you want to see more interesting stories like this.